The Metaverse is all about real-time 3D and interactive, and that's what we in the gaming industry have done for the past 20 years. So the gaming industry has a 20-year head start in terms of adopting that new form of medium.
Hallo und herzlich willkommen zu Handelsblatt Disrupt, dem Podcast über neue Ideen, Disruption und die Zukunft des Internets. Mein Name ist Sebastian Mattes und ich begrüße Sie wie immer ganz herzlich aus unserem Podcast-Studio hier in Düsseldorf. Gerade haben Sie schon die Stimme von Marc Petit gehört. Er ist bei dem Spieleentwickler und Fortnite-Erfinder Epic Games dafür verantwortlich, Märkte auch außerhalb der Gaming-Branche zu erobern. Beispiel Metaverse. Er glaubt fest daran und damit ist er nicht ganz allein. Die Idee des Metaverse, die reale Welt, soll durch eine virtuelle Dimension ergänzt werden. Das zumindest sagen auch die anderen, die gerade dabei sind, eine neue Epoche auszurufen. Die Epoche des Metaverse als sozusagen dritte Stufe der vernetzten Revolution. Nach dem konventionellen Internet 1.0 und dem kollaborativen Social Web der Ära Facebook 2.0 sollen wir demnach nun an der Schwelle zu einer dreidimensionalen digitalen Welt stehen, in der Menschen zusammenkommen, um zu plaudern, zu spielen, einzukaufen und natürlich Geschäfte zu machen. Marktforscher überbieten sich deshalb schon mit abenteuerlichen Schätzungen, wie viel Umsatz in dieser neuen virtuellen Welt möglich sein soll. Von 800 Milliarden Dollar pro Jahr ist da mitunter schon die Rede. Ich habe mich schon länger gefragt, was davon ist eigentlich Fiktion, was ist real und was ist eigentlich schlicht PR? Das ist das Thema unserer heutigen Sendung und zuerst spreche ich darüber mit unserem neuen Silicon-Valley-Korrespondenten Stephan Scheuer. Und den Rest dieses Podcasts übernimmt dann sozusagen Stephan Scheuer, denn er hat dort mit unseren beiden Gästen gesprochen, mit Marc Petit und mit dem Science-Fiction-Autor Neal Stephenson, der den Begriff Metaverse schon vor 20 Jahren in seinem Buch Snow Crash geprägt hat. Und damit kommen wir zu meinem Kollegen Stephan Scheuer in San Francisco. Hallo Stephan.
Hallo Sebastian.
Wie waren deine ersten Tage im neuen Job?
Ja, super spannend. Also hier ist ja sehr, sehr viel die ganze Zeit los. Man wird sofort auch sehr herzlich willkommen geheißen. Also es haben sich sehr, sehr viele Leute direkt schon zum Start gemeldet und von den verrücktesten Ideen erzählt. Der eine Raketenfirma hat, dann einer, der schon ein kleines Metaversum gebaut hat und so. Also es ist echt eine super spannende Community hier.
Und da sind wir jetzt auch schon beim Thema. Du hast ja vor ein paar Tagen als einer der ersten Taten als Korrespondent in San Francisco zum Auftakt eine große Geschichte über das Metaverse geschrieben. Vielleicht mal global gefragt vorab, ist das jetzt der große Milliardenmarkt, den einige hoffen, oder dann doch eher das Milliardengrab, das andere befürchten?
Ich glaube, das ist wie immer bei diesen Hype-Themen. Am Anfang schießt alles so ein bisschen übers Ziel hinaus. Also im Moment schreibt jeder auf alles Mögliche irgendwie Meta drauf, weil es das große Thema ist. Und vieles davon wird sich als eine Luftnummer entpuppen. Aber ich glaube gleichzeitig auch, dass es sehr viele Bereiche gibt, in denen so virtuelle Welten eine sehr gute Daseinsberechtigung haben. Also einige der Gespräche, die ich hier in den letzten Tagen geführt habe, habe ich virtuell geführt, weil es einfach, obwohl die Leute in der gleichen Stadt sind, doch noch üblich ist, das eher bei Videokonferenzen etc. abzuhalten. Und da kann ich mir gut vorstellen, dass da die nächste Stufe kommt. Aber das wird noch ein paar Jahre dauern.
McDonald's will ein Fastfood-Restaurant im Metaverse eröffnen. Virtuelle Villen werden für Hunderttausende Dollar verkauft. Das ist doch völliger Wahnsinn, oder?
Absolut. Also ich meine, ich habe keine Lust, einen virtuellen Big Mac zu essen. Und mit diesen Villen, ich habe mir das angeschaut, die sehen wie so Pixelburgen aus. Aber es geht halt darum, dass man dabei sein will. Also jeder will hier sagen, hey, ich bin Teil dieses neuen Hypes und ich kann das nach außen verkaufen. Und alle spekulieren natürlich darauf, dass die Immobilienpreise steigen. Denn diese Villen im Metaversum waren vor einigen Monaten noch viel, viel weniger wert. Und jetzt gerade steigen die Preise. Also das ist auch so ein bisschen wie mit den Kryptowährungen, ist da auch einfach Zockerei mit dabei.
Du hast ja Meta gerade schon angesprochen. Mark Zuckerberg hat sein Unternehmen von Facebook in Meta umbenannt, vielleicht auch ein Stück weit, weil es in der wirklichen Welt nicht mehr so toll funktioniert für sein Unternehmen. Flüchtet er sich jetzt in diese dritte Generation des Internets, wie einige glauben. Wie bewertest du den Schritt?
Mark Zuckerberg braucht eine nächste Wachstumsgeschichte. Wir haben ja jetzt gesehen, dass er über längere Zeit es geschafft hat, dass der Rückgang der Nutzerzahlen in einzelnen Apps in anderen Bereichen ausgleichen konnte. Und jetzt haben wir mit den Quartalszahlen das erste Mal gesehen, dass die Zahl der aktiven Nutzer rückläufig ist, was natürlich für eine Firma wie Facebook, die immer erzählt, wie viel toller, besser, weiter alles geht, erstmal letztlich so eine Sinnkrise auslöst. Und deswegen ist das Metaversum Meta die Antwort darauf, dass Zuckerberg eine neue Geschichte haben will, die auch von den Problemen in den bestehenden Apps ablenkt. Und deswegen wird alles darauf gesetzt. Und es ist natürlich auch die Verbindung zwischen den ganzen Zukäufen, die Meta oder Facebook in den letzten Jahrzehnten, in den letzten Jahrzehnten getätigt hat. Also sie haben ja mit Oculus Endgeräte, die man benutzen kann. Sie haben aber auch eine ganze Reihe von Inhalteanbietern sich in den Konzern dazugeholt und das Metaversum soll dann all diese Bereiche verbinden.
Die Ideen klingen ja jetzt alle erstmal toll. Jeder malt die großen Visionen an die Wand von dem Metaversum, was dann da irgendwann entsteht, die neue Generation des Internets, das dreidimensionale Internet. Aber dafür wäre ja als Grundlage notwendig, dass all diese Dienste miteinander kommunizieren können. In Wirklichkeit werden doch ganz viele Mini-Metaversen entstehen. Facebook baut eins, LinkedIn möglicherweise, die Spieleanbieter und so weiter, über die wir jetzt gleich noch ausgiebiger sprechen werden. Ist es überhaupt realistisch, dass dieser Traum einer neuen Dimension des Internets wahr wird?
Das Potenzial dafür ist auf jeden Fall da, denn es sind ja nicht nur diejenigen, die so ein Miniversum bauen, die ein Interesse daran haben, dass das Ganze interoperabel ist, sondern auch viele andere Firmen, die da reindrängen. Also wenn Adidas auf einmal einen Sportschuh für das Metaversum entwickelt, dann möchten sie natürlich auch, dass man diesen Schuh nicht nur in der Welt von Facebook anziehen kann, sondern vielleicht auch in der Welt von Fortnite oder von anderen Herstellern. Und diese Interoperabilität, die muss natürlich jetzt erstmal gewährleistet werden. Und wer das genau hinbekommen kann, das ist noch völlig offen. Ich meine, Zuckerberg hat in seinen Ankündigungen immer versprochen, dass alles offen sein soll. Ob das jetzt wirklich so funktionieren wird, weiß man noch nicht. Aber ich kann mir auch vorstellen, dass sich ansonsten auch andere Firmen davon abwenden werden.
Wie soll es funktionieren? Das ist doch völlig unrealistisch, wenn doch heute noch nicht mal die Messenger unterschiedlicher Anbieter miteinander reden können.
Ja, wenn man sich hier im Silicon Valley mit den Entwicklern und den Ideengebern hinter dem Metaversum unterhält, dann ist die Antwort, die sie immer geben, Blockchain. Also, dass darüber eine Möglichkeit geschaffen werden soll, dass man nicht eine zentrale Instanz hat, eine Firma wie jetzt Facebook, Meta oder eben auch Microsoft oder jemand anders, sondern eben eine transparente Technik, die dafür sorgen kann, dass es solche Schnittstellen gibt. Das ist allerdings alles noch Zukunftsmusik, weil natürlich hat eine Firma wie Facebook ein großes Interesse daran, eine Plattform zu bauen, bei der sie erstmal der dominante Spieler sind und bei der sie auch an Einnahmen beteiligt werden. Also das Potenzial ist, glaube ich, da, aber die Frage ist, wie lange das dauert und ob es auch genug Leute gibt, die ein Interesse daran haben, diese Interoperabilität auch aufzubauen.
Wenn wir mal von diesem ganzen Hype-Gerede absehen, was ist die wichtigste Innovation, die letztlich durch das Metaverse entstehen oder letztlich bleiben wird?
Ich kann mir schon vorstellen, dass es einfach eine neue Form der Sinneswahrnehmung ergeben kann. Also als ich in den 90er Jahren angefangen habe, Computerspiele zu spielen, da waren das ein paar Pixel, die man über den Bildschirm bewegt hat und das waren Spieler und dann wurde auf einmal die Grafik immer besser und ich habe damals gedacht, okay, ist nur eine Frage der Zeit, bis Computerspiele so realistisch sein werden wie die wirkliche Welt. Aber diese Stufe haben wir bis vor kurzem noch nicht erreicht gehabt. Und Marc Petit wird das ja auch nochmal erklären von Epic Games, dass es der Firma gelungen ist, jetzt eine Form von Umgebung zu schaffen, die man wirklich kaum noch von der Realität unterscheiden kann. Und diese Innovation gepaart mit besseren Brillen, mit einer besseren KI-Technik kann, glaube ich, dazu führen, dass wir eine komplett neue Welt da entdecken werden. Da geht es nicht nur um Computerspiele, da geht es auch um Kunst, da geht es einfach darum, etwas völlig Neues zu erleben. Und das, finde ich, ist total faszinierend und ist auch etwas Erstrebenswertes, dass wir da noch was Neues schaffen können.
Gleich kommen ja 2 Interviews von dir genau zu dem Thema. Magst du ein bisschen Ausblick geben? Was hast du diskutiert? Was hat dich am meisten überrascht?
Ja, Marc Petit ist derjenige, der bei Epic Games genau für diese Ideen mit dem Metaversum verantwortlich ist und da eben auch diese Plattform geschaffen hat. Und interessant ist bei Epic Games insgesamt, dass es eine kleinere Firma ist, die in der Gaming-Branche aktiv ist, die es allerdings immer wieder mit den großen, die Großen herausgefordert hat, also Prozesse geführt hat gegen Apple, gegen Google, auch gegen Meta. Und deswegen sind sie da so ein bisschen so der David, der gegen die großen Goliaths angeht und einfach jetzt eine richtig coole Technik hat. Und die andere Person, mit der ich gesprochen habe, das ist Neal Stephenson, ein bekannter Science-Fiction-Autor, einer derjenigen, die hier im Silicon Valley wie so ein Guru verehrt werden, weil alle eben seine Bücher gelesen haben und viele seiner Bücher Jahrzehnte technologische Entwicklungen vorweggenommen haben. Also er war derjenige, der den Begriff Metaversum erfunden und geprägt hat. Er war aber auch derjenige, der sowas wie die Kryptowährung sich schon erdacht hat in einem Buch, bevor sie wirklich Wirklichkeit geworden sind, und auch sowas wie so eine Gehirnschnittstelle, was Elon Musk jetzt mit Neuralink angeht. Also das ist irre, was er in seinen Büchern da heute schon erdenkt, was irgendwann später Realität werden kann.
Was hat dich in den Gesprächen am meisten überrascht?
Also bei Stephenson finde ich, ist das super Spannende, dass er eben nicht nur solche Bücher schreibt, sondern dass er selbst auch Geschäftsmann ist. Also er hat zum Beispiel in der Raketenfirma von Jeff Bezos mitgearbeitet und hat deswegen immer so diesen Link gehabt zwischen völlig verrückten Geschichten, die er sich ausdenkt, indem er eben stark dran ist an der Tech-Szene und gleichzeitig aber auch jemand, der versucht hat, sowas dann in die Realität umzusetzen. Das macht ihn einfach unglaublich spannend.
Stephan, ganz herzlichen Dank.
Danke, Sebastian.
Und damit kommen wir zu Stephan Scheuers ersten Gespräch, und zwar seiner Unterhaltung mit Marc Petit.
Let's just go right into it. Here in the Bay Area, everybody in the tech industry is talking about the Metaverse. You at Epic Games have been one of the loudest voices advocating Metaverse as the future of the internet, beside Facebook maybe, or Meta as Facebook's mother company. But what is the Metaverse actually?
Well, I think you said it. I mean, for us, we have a broad vision of the metaverse, which is the extension of the internet to real-time 3D. A new form of media, a new medium, which is interactive at the core, multi-user at the core, sometimes immersive, but we make sure to call out that the metaverse is just not just VR. I mean, it would be fantastic to consume that content immersively with, great AR or VR glasses, but certainly, you can have an immersive experiences and interactive experiences using traditional, mediums like computers and phones. So that's a very, very broad view. We think that we are probably already in the metaverse. We'll be deeper in the metaverse when every single panels in our lives, can display interactive content. Like, of course, our TVs. Maybe we'll put screen in front of our eyes, as I mentioned, with wearables, but also our windows, the windshield of our cars. I think it's, the metaverse can be something that's completely virtual, but it also can be about the augmentation of our everyday lives with every single glass panel. Contributing to that.
Right. So with, for example, Fortnite as one of the most popular games in the world that you guys created, there is already something like a virtual world where people do not only play games, but they attend concerts, they attend large events with tens of thousands of people. So from your point of view, is the metaverse something like an extension of that?
Yeah, I mean, so remember the metaverse is all about real-time 3D and interactive, and that's what we in the gaming industry have done for the past 20 years. So the gaming industry has a 20-year head start in terms of adopting that new form of medium. And, so that's why you see Roblox and Minecraft and PUBG and Fortnite at the forefront of that transformation. And I think one thing we understood very well, and we, Epic, and we owe this to our is the vision that, a game is a social experience, and we need to abstract the platform boundaries. So very, very early in the life of Fortnite, we make sure that, if you are on an Xbox, I'm on a PlayStation, you're on a PC, we can play together. And I think that's, and we've been pushing the experimentation around this notion of social first gaming and, coming together on a platform at the end of the day to just do stuff. We have voice chat so that people can just hang out and chat. And then we have a lot of games, for a battle royale game, but also through Fortnite Creative. You have a rich diversity of games. And then we're starting to bring brands and to do, some more diversified experience in entertainment, like you mentioned, concerts, or launching, products for cars like we did with Ferrari, or fashion like we did with Balenciaga. So yes, we are, because of our background in gaming, we understand how to execute on those things. So we were able to demonstrate a lot of those social first experiments, be one of the first company to demonstrate that.
Right. I do get that within the gaming industry, but I'm wondering, is the metaverse really extending to other parts of our lives? So, for example, business, that's also one of the ideas that we might be working in the metaverse. But I think the jump to get people really to be working in a virtual environment is pretty big. Do you really see us working there?
Yeah, absolutely. You are doing it, or some people are doing it. I mean, let's take two examples through COVID. And COVID has been a massive acceleration of online collaboration. I mean, with virtual production, we see a lot of people doing virtual scouting of locations, or, planning shoots in a virtual environment together remotely using our multi-user technology. Same for car manufacturers in Germany who have, a design studio back in California. With the Unreal Engine, you can do collaborative design reviews using digital twins, online. Now we would say, a year and a half ago, we would say we do online, virtual design reviews. Now we'd say we design reviews in the metaverse. And so it's happening. We're working with major automotive brand to create virtual showrooms, a virtual selling experience where somebody would come to a virtual showroom and we would do the same pitch that we would do in a classical showroom, show them the car, explain them the features, explain them, the configuration and all of that virtually using the 3D technology. So I think
But are people really going to buy a car if they haven't touched it? Because this is something like you're spending so much time inside a vehicle. You probably want to smell it. You want to experience it in the first place. So is it just enough to have seen it in a virtual version? You
should ask Elon Musk and Tesla, because they've been selling cars online for some time, and I don't think it's an. And with the supply chain program we're going through, we're talking to people. I mean, people are buying cars sight unseen now because you have no choice, because it's you have supply chain problems and you have COVID issues, but with proper visualization, it's not an issue.
Right. But for example, taking the real estate example that you just explained, would you also buy a virtual house? I mean, that's the next step, right? You can own a house only in a virtual world. Would you do that? Would you buy a real estate in the metaverse?
I might, but I'm not going to pay as much money because I think, what's the value of I know there is a big conversation right now in virtual real estate. To be honest, I don't fully understand. I would certainly like to have, a digital twin of my house on the cloud to show my mom. My mom is in Paris. She hasn't visited my house. Wouldn't mind that she can see it. When my surveillance systems, my IoT systems, my home automation system, I would love to have a digital twin of my house so that I can monitor it from afar. But that's, and that's the metaverse to me. It doesn't mean I'm going to buy, a virtual house in some decentralized virtual platform that I don't fully understand.
I think it's quite interesting that you're rather skeptical on this real estate front. So looking at this broader idea of the metaverse, what to you is more hype and what is really something that's gonna be a reality in, let's say, 2 or 3 years?
Well, my crystal ball is as good as anybody's crystal ball. At this point, we're playing the prediction game. But what we know is currently, the platforms I mentioned, Fortnite, Roblox, and Minecraft, and PUBG, and which come from the gaming world, they've assembled an audience of 350 million monthly active users, which is where the internet was in 1999. So I think those platforms are here to stay. And our CEO made a public, statement that he believes that the first platform to have 1 billion users is likely to play a big role in how, in defining what the metaverse is going to be. And so I think those companies, especially coming from the gaming industry, and hopefully Epic, has a chance to influence and create, a platform that, will stand the test of time. But there is no guarantee. You mentioned Meta, you mentioned everybody will want a piece of that. So, but I also see, at Epic, we're pushing an open metaverse where everybody, something that's open and extensible, where everybody could create, using the Unreal Engine today, you can create your own miniverse very, very easily. And, I'm sure we'll find mechanisms for interoperability and navigation when you can move easily from one verse to the next verse, using some simple mechanism, like we did on the web. So, I don't foresee that one platform can create, like a virtual land platform like we see today. I don't know I don't understand the value they create. You would have to guarantee that billions of people are going to have to go through that platform.
Yeah, absolutely. So you have this idea of having an open platform, but on the other hand, you're basically criticizing big tech companies for the way that they're using their power. You mentioned Facebook, but you've also been in a legal dispute with Apple and Google. So you're basically saying those big names, they are evil and you guys are better. So are they really abusing their power when it comes to the ideas of a metaverse?
Well, remember, we have a technology disruption. So those platforms that you mentioned, the Netflixes, the Facebook, the Instagrams, even the WhatsApp, all those things, they were built on the digital video revolution, the commoditization of digital video and the fact that pictures and video were easy to create, easy to consume and everything. And we created the world that we live in. The Web 2.0 world was based on that technology. And people developed business model with that technology, that were like more Web 2.0 business model were more around collecting data and selling advertising. We still live in the world of interstitial advertising. And when we try to, we observe people, try to guess what they want, and then we push them something they don't want. That's fundamentally the model that we live every day on the social platforms. We at Epic, we say, hey, there is a new technology, real-time 3D, that we understand very well with the Unreal Engine. But we also have that vision that we think we need differentiated business models. And we are walking the talk with Fortnite, and we are proposing a true creator-based economy where, the business model is fundamentally based on a transaction when people will buy content that they want. And we are proving with Fortnite that's a business model that works. Fortnite is not based like, I'm going to spy you and push you some advertising. That's absolutely not the way it works. It works on the gameplay is free, and nothing you can do to improve the gameplay or to win. There's no pay to win. There is not even pay to play. But you manage your own persona and you buy the content that you want. And we have a fair remuneration way for the content creators and all that stuff. So we have an open and fair platform there. The public battle that we have is, when the gatekeeper takes 30% on the top just because he can, we believe it's unhealthy for the ecosystem because that 30% can happen to be most of the time, the profit that there is. So if the profit gets swiped out, because the gatekeeper can swipe it out, this is not a good thing for the creator. But we believe that, we would not like to carry the old business model in the new metaverse. It's kind of our why we're doing what we do now.
It feels a bit like a fight of David against Goliath, looking at your size and comparing it to the big tech companies, like the big names, as you just mentioned, Apple, Google, Facebook, the difference is huge. So just looking at the money that has been spent on augmented and virtual reality that Facebook announced, we saw that they burned $10 billion last year. This is a huge number. I think your investment last year was $1 billion. So how are you going to catch up in this race?
So there are multiple things that, So the fight David versus Goliath, is on the technology front. Yes, we're a small team, but as I said, the game industry we've been at it for 20 years. We see a number of companies, Facebook being very public, but other like Apple not very public on their plan. But we know they're working on also harnessing the power of real-time 3D. And on the technology front, may the best man win. What we're asking, is we support and the creation of open standards so that, for the consumer, they have a fair choice and, they allow to choose platforms and technology on merit. And I think, in technology, it's not just about sheer size. individuals and geniuses from the industry that can invent the future. So I'm not worried.
When thinking about the requirements for a metaverse, you basically have two, right? On the one hand, you have hardware, glasses, etc., that you already mentioned. Meta has bought Oculus. Then we have Apple, where you mentioned that they're developing something. We have Microsoft. But then there's also the software side, and this is where you guys come in, right? You launched Unreal Engine 5, which gives new opportunities to create virtual worlds, even create virtual humans. Please explain a little bit more of what this engine really is about.
Yeah, so there. So on the hardware, again, just like we've seen in the world of gaming, we can partner very efficiently and work with a number of hardware providers. I mean, like the Unreal Engine is available across Microsoft, Xbox, and the Sony PlayStation and everything. So, we know how to manage that, and we're always have good relationship with hardware manufacturers. We support always the latest and best hardware for our partners, so we can handle that. It's not a problem there. If you look at that, they have in common that we want to empower a small team to achieve the kind of production value that's right now is just the hallmark of bigger teams, because we believe in this empowerment of creators. Photorealism should come for free virtually, so that's what we do with MetaHuman. Making sure that creating, a photorealistic characters actually happens in a web browser for free on the internet. We have our Megascan library when we allow people to recreate any biome or any environment very easily. You can recreate Africa. You can recreate, places in Antarctica. You can create like the Virgin Forest. We have all of those assets to allow you to do this. We have 500 million Epic accounts in our social graph, giving access to 2.5 billion, friends. So that audience and that ability for people to engage, for smaller creator to engage with such a large audience, is also at the heart of our proposition. We've taken all of the social technology of Fortnite and make it available to all game developers. It's called Epic Online Services, and it's also a free offer.
I found it quite fascinating to see that suddenly online games really look like Hollywood blockbuster video. The jump in quality is actually surprising. Why did this happen now? Because I remember when I was playing video games in the 1990s, we always thought like, okay, video games are going to be like movies in the next couple of years. But then it took basically 2 decades. So what changed that you can achieve that now?
I think you have the combination of two things. Of course, the hardware. I mean, we have to pay homage to our hardware partners, whether it's NVIDIA in the world of PCs or AMD for console. And, even Sony and Microsoft are building such, beautiful pieces of hardware that are those, the PS5 and the Xbox Series X. So that's the base layer, is the fact that we now get very capable hardware. And we have high disk bandwidth, we have SSD drives, and we have a bunch of things. So there is a maturity of the hardware environment. And then the other aspect is just software engineering. I mean, our nanite technology, which is this virtualized geometry that allows, an infinite amount of detail in a scene, and our Lumen technology, which is real-time global illumination, that's really, the result of a handful of people researching the topic for many, many years.
So taking the two things together, we have the hardware, now there are new software capabilities. If we look at what this metaverse might look like, one of the things that always pops to my mind is Second Life. We saw that there was this word, a lot of people got engaged with it, and a lot of people quickly got frustrated with it because there was a lot of problems with hate speech, with harassment, etc. So how do you think this metaverse is going to evolve, and how can problems that we saw in the past be avoided?
Well, a lot of the problems are, related to human nature. So I think we can minimize the impact of them. I don't know that we can avoid them. But, if you go back to Second Life 2003, it's 18 years ago. So, and we're working with a number of brands, and we're building the technology so that we create something that's actually truly safe for our kids. And, it will always be an aspiring goal, but we will always be at the forefront and delivering, the safest experience possible in those environments. It's something that's deep in our values.
But how can you achieve that? So at the moment, you're looking at more than 50 million users, which is already a high number. But thinking about the potential of the metaverse, this is hundreds of fold of what you're looking at now. If you have billions of users using the metaverse, how can you avoid all of those problems?
There's a lot of technology and complexity there, which we're all, as I said, developing and learning. But there is another aspect which I believe is, for me, is particularly interesting is, part of the promise of the metaverse, ultimately is this sense of co-presence, this feeling that the person that we interact with is close to us, So I do believe that the technology will make this simpler. And we're all learning also from, managing groups of friends and, from the social experience that we had on this first generation social platform that we're living through right now. I think those learnings are going to be there, both personally and both on the regulation framework as well. But I think co-presence can make things easy.
Right. I really hope that you are right, and it is going to be easier to do it in this metaverse, and that metaverse is not turning into a meta hell, as harassment, if somebody's even feeling close, might even be more dangerous than just getting evil text messages, right? So the stakes are even higher.
Yeah, but our commitment is to create, platforms that are open and fair from a business perspective and safe from a usage perspective. Safety and trust is, again, at the heart of everything we do.
Perfect. Thank you so much for your time.
You're welcome.
Und jetzt zu Stephan Scheuers nächstem Gespräch, und zwar mit Neal Stephenson, Cyberpunk, Science-Fiction-Autor zu Tech-Themen, Berater von Jeff Bezos zum Beispiel und der Mann, der Begriffe wie Avatar und Metaverse zum globalen Vokabular hinzugefügt hat.
So, some people here in Silicon Valley call you a tech Nostradamus, as your fiction preceded reality by decades, at least in quite some instances. Do you think the term fits?
It's a good analogy because Nostradamus didn't actually make very specific predictions. He just wrote some crazy stories, and then people look at them hundreds of years later and see what they want to see. So yeah, I'd rather be described that way than as a strictly accurate predictor.
But are your stories so crazy? I mean, just thinking about Snow Crash in 1992 now, where you basically coined the term metaverse, and now we have a company, Facebook, even renaming itself Meta and building something like the metaverse. So is it really so crazy?
No, I'm joking a little bit, but I would just say people tend to be generous in their assessments of these things. So in a science fiction book, you can predict 100 things, and if 5 of them sort of come true, then people will remember the 5 and say, look, he predicted the future. And the 95 that didn't come true, they politely ignore.
But I find the description that you had of what this metaverse really makes is quite closely to what we see evolving at the moment. What I also find quite interesting is that you have this very dystopian view of the role of big companies in the book. So I was quite surprised to see that now big tech is using exactly this term. Did they misunderstand the warnings that you have in the book?
Well, it's a little complicated. I think it's obviously the case that the world in Snow Crash is a dystopian future. It's also meant to be funny. It's not an entirely serious. There's strong elements of parody and humor in the dystopian side of it. The metaverse itself, the massively multiplayer online world that's described in the book, is neither dystopian nor utopian particularly. It's just a thing that many people use, and some people might use it in ways that are sort of tacky and suspect, but other people use it to make art or to make things that are really so culturally significant, let's say. So there's a couple of descriptions in the book of people who've built houses for themselves in the metaverse that are extraordinarily beautiful works of architecture with fountains and decorative arts and so on. And those are cultural achievements that have the same value as cultural achievements in the physical world. So it's a mixed bag, as with so many other things. And the metaverse per se is neither good nor bad.
The interesting thing is that we have exactly this happening right now. So there are people paying hundreds of thousands of dollars for buying a mansion that doesn't really exist in reality, but it just exists in a virtual realm. Would you buy a house in the metaverse?
Well, there's two reasons to buy an asset like that. So this is Handelsblatt, so I'm going to talk like a business guy. You can trade assets in a speculative way, or you can trade on the basis of value. So you can be like, Warren Buffett, let's say, who looks for value in something and tries to invest in things that in his opinion have a legitimate economic basis. They're somehow generating new value and new productivity in the world. And so he wants to participate in their growth. And then a speculator, a day trader, let's say, just buys something in the hope that it's going to get more expensive and they can sell it to somebody else. So the only circumstance under which I would buy into something like that is if I felt that it was more of a Warren Buffett kind of investment, a value-based investment. Is it something that that represents some kind of economic productivity that will grow organically and achieve value over time? And I think that is possible. I don't see any reason that we can't have investments like that in the metaverse in the future. I don't know if I'm seeing that quite yet, but I hope we'll get there.
So did you already buy something in the metaverse then, hoping that the price or the value will increase?
No, there is no one metaverse. So that's an important thing to remember, is that many different companies have launched virtual worlds that are kind of based on let's call it a geographical metaphor. Okay, so there's a parcel of virtual territory. They divide it up into smaller parcels, and they sell those off in the same way that you might sell a real estate development in the real world. And those are not all linked together, right? They're all just separate, completely independent projects. You can't walk, as far as I know, from one to the other. In the book, what's described is there's a situation where there was only one metaverse, and people can create developments at different locations in the metaverse because it's very large and there's plenty of room for anyone to go out and start a development somewhere. But that hasn't happened so far. Instead, it's a lot of separate entrepreneurs kind of launching their own versions of it. And this means that if you're thinking of purchasing one of those pieces of virtual property, you are placing a bet that you think that particular version of the metaverse is going to become a stable and growing company. And I haven't taken the time to evaluate all of these different little new metaverses yet, just because I'm busy.
You're busy with all of the work that you have been doing. I mean, the pure scope of different topics that you've published on is huge, and it's not only the metaverse now becoming reality. I'm thinking about your 1994 book Interface that is close to what Elon Musk is now doing with Neuralink. I'm thinking about the 99 book of Cryptonomicon, which is now credited as being sketching the basis for cryptocurrencies. So where do you get all of those ideas from?
Well, it's not always the same answer. I'm with a good story. And so, and then the technical subject matter has to support that somehow. And sometimes you can begin with a technical idea and I build a story out on it. And other times it's the other way around. So, for example, in the Diamond Age, that started with just an idea for a story, which is that a little girl finds a magic book that transforms her life. And then I went looking for a technology, in this case, nanotechnology, that I thought could explain how that book would work. Okay. Cryptonomicon is based on things that were happening in the Bay Area cypherpunk movement in the 1990s. I was merely an observer of what was going on there. I wasn't I'm basically just taking other people's ideas that were in the air at the time and kind of extrapolating and telling a story around them. But there's no, I don't think there's any new concepts there, or anything that I somehow invented on a technical level that hadn't already been invented and explored in great detail by people in the community in the 1990s and earlier.
Then let's have a look at your latest book, Terminal Shock, where you basically write about, if I translated correctly, geoengineering and how people try to intervene with climate. Do you think this is also something that's going to be reality in, I don't know, a decade or so?
Yeah, termination shock. The situation as I understand it is that right now there's something like 414 parts per million of CO2 in the world's atmosphere. When I was born, it was 320. So during the time I've been alive, it's gone from 320 to 414. And before the Industrial Revolution, it was in the mid 200s. And it's still going up quite rapidly. And the rate at which it's going up is continuing to increase. The most optimistic predictions right now are that in the years, say, 2050 or 2060, we may become carbon neutral, meaning that we will stop increasing. If the parts per million is 500 at that point, it'll be 500 the next year and the next year and the next year. So it'll be stuck at an extremely high, dangerous level for a long time, because it takes hundreds of thousands of years for nature to remove CO2 from the atmosphere. The last time that the CO2 level was as high as it is today was something like 15 million years ago, when the climate of the Earth was completely different from what it is now. All of the steps that we're taking to reduce fossil fuel use and ride bicycles and turn down the thermostat and all of that, none of that's bad, but it's just microscopic compared to what needs to happen in order to prevent huge numbers of people from dying and huge economic calamity. So I think that the solution that we should be looking at has to be carbon capture. We need to implement carbon capture on a massive scale. It'll be the biggest engineering project in history. And it'll take decades for this to come into existence. And I'm seeing very encouraging signs just within the last few months of people, very intelligent people and very wealthy people, beginning to put their minds and their money behind carbon capture. But there's going to be a period of decades during which there's still far too much carbon dioxide in the air. And so geoengineering is a very simple and very inexpensive way to cool things down. It's controversial for good reasons, but I think that there are countries in this world that are going to begin seeing mass fatality events in coming decades because of heat, and why wouldn't they, in their own interest, implement some of these geoengineering schemes to save their countries. It would surprise me if somebody didn't start doing it. Maybe not next year, maybe not 5 years from now, but 10 years from now, I think that it's going to start happening.
You mentioned what rich entrepreneurs are thinking about doing next. I mean, you are not only an author, but for example, you've been working with Jeff Bezos, the richest man on the planet. With
second richest, yeah.
At the moment, second richest, but he used to be the richest. You were with Blue Origin for 7 years. You were even with another company, Magic Leap, that's working on augmented reality. So. Is an author a good entrepreneur? Is an author a good company person? How did that go along?
It's a good question. I think, in any job, any role, one needs to be mindful of one's strengths and weaknesses. I'm an okay manager, but I'm not a great one. The best way to use me in a company is to kind of explore some ideas and, evaluate some possible things that the company might want to do. When it comes to actually doing them, hiring people, managing people, making things happen, then other kinds of people need to take on those responsibilities.
Right. So what about this close connection between tech entrepreneurs and science fiction in general? I mean, many of the very influential tech entrepreneurs are outspoken fans of your work. I'm just thinking about Bill Gates, Sergey Brin, or Peter Thiel. What's the reason? Do you have to think like so far ahead in the industry that science fiction is just the furthest thing that's possible? Or what do you think is the reason?
I think that readers who have a technical mind, when they read a book, a work of science fiction that's been done right, they can tell that they're hearing from a sort of kindred spirit in a way. They go, whoever wrote this book gets it. They've done their homework. They're interested in what I'm interested in. Their hopes and fantasies are similar to my hopes and fantasies. And so reading this book is a pleasure for me, in a way that, reading Catcher in the Rye is not. So that's where we get that connection. And sometimes, it's there's a range of let's call it plausibility in science fiction books. So if you look at Dune, for example, it's like 10,000 years in the future. You've got interstellar spacecraft that can only exist because the pilots are taking drugs. They're kind of hallucinating their way through the cosmos. You've got magical witches, so an engineer, a scientist can read Dune and enjoy that book tremendously and love that book, but they're not thinking that, one day they're going to ride a sandworm or, or go on an interstellar trip on drugs. So there's no expectation of those things actually coming true. And then, as you sort of draw back to science fiction that's set in a more near future realm, then it actually does have the ability to inspire and motivate people, I think. If you look at The Expanse, for example, the technologies that are described there are certainly advanced technologies, but you can recognizably see how they're based on technologies that we have now. And the setting is our solar system, and the planets and the asteroids. Those are all based on things that we could theoretically go out and visit. So it depends on the book, but in some cases, there is a book can kind of inspire people to actually try to implement some of the fantastical technologies and situations that are shown in its pages.
Thank you so much for your time, and hopefully you will find the time to write a next book so we get something more to read. Thank you so much.
You're very kind. Yeah, thank you.
Und damit sind wir auch schon wieder am Ende von Handelsblatt Disrupt. Ganz herzlichen Dank nochmal an Stephan Scheuer für diese Interviews. Und wie immer freue ich mich natürlich über Kommentare in der Handelsblatt Disrupt LinkedIn-Gruppe oder senden Sie mir gerne eine Mail. Die Details finden Sie wie immer in den Shownotes. Danke an dieser Stelle auch für die Unterstützung von Johann Lensing und Regina Körner und Migo Fecke von professionalpodcast.com, dem Dienstleister für Strategieberatung und Podcastproduktion. Wenn Sie möchten und grundsätzlich Interesse daran haben, immer auf dem Laufenden zu sein, jederzeit alle Artikel des Handelsblatts zu lesen, Zugriff auf all unsere Recherchen und Artikel im Archiv zu haben und natürlich auch alle Podcasts zu hören, dann habe ich ein Handelsblatt Disrupt Vorteilsangebot für Sie reserviert. Schauen Sie doch einfach mal nach unter handelsblatt.com/Mehrwirtschaft. Die Details finden Sie aber natürlich auch in den Shownotes. Wir hören uns dann nächste Woche Freitag wieder. Bis dahin wünsche ich Ihnen interessante digitale, aber natürlich auch analoge Zeiten. Ihr Sebastian Mattes.